Welcome to BoCo Summit Rural Broadband Technology Solutions 2018. We wish to thank our sponsors for helping us create a path for fast, affordable connections. Meet Walter Grigg, Vice Chair of the Botetourt County Broadband Advisory Commission and Executive Vice President of Transportation and Business Intelligence for Lawrence Companies.
It's 5 after 4, so it's time for BoCo Summit to start. And we're going to get it going here. And the first thing we're going to do is introduce a very special person who is our Vice Chairman of the Botetourt County Broadband Advisory Commission. Woohoo! Mr. Walter Grigg, the third. I have to add in the third. And Walter is the VP of Transportation and Business Intelligence of Lawrence Companies. And Lawrence is one of the largest employers in the county, if not the largest employer that's not a government agency. And it's also employee-owned. And we are so happy to have him here today as a member of our commission, as a sponsor, and most importantly, as Walter, because Walter has helped make this entire commission come about to enact furthering broadband development throughout the county. So I'd like to hand it over to Walter Grigg.
I can't resist the urge to rap when I have a mic in my hand. So first off, thank you, Arlene. All of you, I think, have experienced Arlene just as we have. Utterly relentless in making this summit happen. So I wanted to start off with a simple welcome and thank you for being here. But what I wanted to do was tell you the story of how we ended up here today. And it somewhat centers around me, but I'll come off that me thing very quick and help everybody understand what I'm talking about. So I grew up in Roanoke County, so the county right down the street. Was born and raised there, went to school, a little small school in Southwest Virginia, and I fell in love with this area, the foothills of Southwest Virginia. I thought I might find better things in other places, so I was fortunate enough to work for General Electric for about a decade. Worked in all kinds of different industries, primarily supporting commercial nuclear power. So they sent me all over the country, which is really cool. I like to tell people I worked for GE when they made light bulbs and money. And they don't make either anymore. So in living a lot of different places in the country and traveling a lot of places, when I moved somewhere, there were the simple things you turned on. You turned on your water, you turned on your electricity, you turned on your cable, and you turned on your internet. And those were just givens. Anywhere from eastern Wisconsin to southern California to Linden, New Jersey, right outside of New York, to all these different Houston, even here in Roanoke when I moved back and forth a couple times, in multiple rural areas. They build nuclear power plants away from population centers for a reason. So even those places had the internet. Eventually I kind of saw the writing on the walls and decided I wanted to make a career change. And decided to leave General Electric about the right time, probably the best decision I made. At the time, I had met my wife. We had lived together a couple of years, based out of Norfolk, Virginia. And she made the comment she wanted to get back home, and my only other option to stay with GE was to move to Brazil. So she pretty much told me she was moving home anyways. And she's from Botetourt, so that's how I ended up in Botetourt. That was my connection. I was able to get back to the foothills of Southwest Virginia, which is absolutely amazing. But also I was able to live in Botetourt and see what Botetourt has to offer. It is an absolutely amazing place. For those of you that are from here, you know. From those of you that have traveled in, thank you for being here. And look around. Look at the vistas and scapes when you get a chance. Try and meet some of the people that are from here. It's an absolutely amazing place, and fell in love with it. So when we moved into our house, moved back to Botetourt, moved into our house, I asked my wife, I said, well, have we got all the services hooked up? And she said, we're in the country now. We're in rural America. So our water comes from a well and our sewer is a septic tank. And I said, okay, that's fine. I got you. How about cable? And she said, I got the satellite hooked up. And I said, how about the internet? And she said, well, we don't get that here. And I thought she was crazy. And she assured me that it wasn't possible. So I also asked her if there's anything else I need to know about Botetourt. For instance, is there a toilet paper shortage or any other critical things to remember about this area or no? And she said, no, just the internet. So as we were looking for our dream home and looking for the place we wanted to settle down, we moved 2 or 3 times, and each time I got excited and wondered if we were going to get the internet hooked up, and the answer was no each time. Now, there are places in Botetourt, so I'm not suggesting Botetourt is completely devoid of broadband internet service and high population densities. We have it, and it's very good, and our providers do a very good job there. But in the rural parts of this county, which is the majority of it by land mass, we don't have it. So I set forth on this mission. So kind of bringing up kind of what I did in my past, I've worked on huge projects at multi-billion-dollar facilities and hundreds of millions of dollars of projects. So I know what's possible. I've seen people who set their mind to things solve problems. So I knew it was possible, and I thought a lot of myself at that time. I've since changed my mind after this project. I thought I could fix this thing. I thought I could do it. I thought to myself, I've fixed nuclear power plants. I can certainly get the internet to work around here. So for 4 years, I spent my evenings and my weekends, and some days, don't tell work, reading and researching. And it really started in the floor of my garage. I was sitting Indian style in a garage that was mostly empty, just full of boxes where we had just moved in. I can remember sitting there and hopping on YouTube, and I said, well, YouTube will have the answer. Mind you, I'm on a cellular connection. The irony of that does not escape me, in that it was extremely expensive to teach myself this stuff. So for about 4 years, I tried to solve this problem. I went from not really understanding anything about internet, other than it's a service and you plug it in the wall and it works, to having a pretty deep, thorough, detailed knowledge of all the different mechanisms of how it can be provided, who the players are, what the limitations are, and why. I run a business myself. I understand the business aspects of it. I came to learn them very well, that there are practical limitations that make it not economically feasible by certain mechanisms, would be my challenge to that, to provide it ubiquitously across rural areas. I am also an amateur ham radio operator. That was one of my hobbies, or still is. So I understand radios. So I said, I think I can solve this with radios. So I got into understanding wireless and went ad nauseum, researched what was possible, went all the way down to the point of designing tower installations. I talked with all of the local tower providers, Crown Castle SBA and all the above. Did RF modeling on all the different spectrums and whatnot that we could provide it. I realized, knowing radios, that radios love altitude, and we have mountains, and we have bunches of mountains. So we have plenty of altitude, and I found that I could cover all kinds of stuff. Well, as I'm geeking out on this, my wife is losing interest rapidly. So I find myself wanting to talk about it pretty often. And as I was meeting my wife's friends, and I was meeting new people through work and through the community and community activities, I would talk about this project that I was pursuing. And I found that everybody I talked to, it's somewhat overstated, but almost everybody in Botetourt said, "That's awesome. Can you help me?" So my model started to expand. So I said, well, I think I might have it figured out, minus a couple things. So let me see if I can get your address, and I'll figure out. So I started to expand it. I talked to the next person, and they said, God, that'd be great. Yeah, we're having trouble. We can't get it, or what we can get's way too expensive. Cellular, they limit capacity. Everybody knows these stories. So for a handful of years, I came up ultimately with this massive plan, and I kind of looked around the room and realized I'm not an engineer by education. I'm not an internet service provider. And this thing is much larger than I am. And I was kind of ready to let it die. I was kind of ready to resign myself to only using what was available in my data package through cellular and kind of let it die on the vine. But the problem was, anytime I would go somewhere, I was reminded of the story I told them, that they need the internet, and they're looking for me to help them get it. as I went further down that path, I started to run into people that were trying to solve the problem themselves, the same way I was at some level, some other level of technical engagement, technical investment, at some way, shape, or form. And everybody was contacting the providers, the incumbent providers. Everybody was looking at different ways. But at the end of the day, I personally wasn't able to solve it. So being new to Botetourt, I thought, well, the only thing I can do to rally greater support and investment is to reach out to our local government. Well, working on very large projects with GE, I had worked with many government agencies, and most of them were like putting a battery in your mouth. It was miserable. I didn't want to interact with them. So I figured, not knowing anybody from our local government, that it was going to go die on the vine. This project of mine, this passion of mine, this dream of mine was going to die. So I got in touch with a relatively new county administrator, expecting relatively nothing to come of it. His name was Gary LaRue. He's probably in this building right now, just not in this meeting. And I asked him, I said, Gary, can we talk a little bit? I think I see a really big opportunity in Botetourt County. And I figured he would pawn me off for a couple months or something. And he said, well, how about right now? So we talked for an hour and a half. And that story that I just told you that took about 5-6 minutes, I told him for an hour and a half. I went into great detail talking about all the different people that I had encountered, all the different people that were asking for help, asking for assistance, asking for better solutions. And he took it to heart. A couple days later, maybe a week or two, came back and said, I've talked to the board. The board says they also agree because they've heard the same story. Even some of the people on the board were having some of the same issues, but had not rationalized making this a larger project. So Gary comes back to me a couple weeks later and says, we are commissioning a needs assessment, as a county should do, as a government should do, because as of then, I was really just anecdotal evidence, even all the people I had talked to, anecdotal. So county commissioned Eddy Communications to do a needs assessment. They did it over a couple months. The needs assessment came back, and lo and behold, absolutely. We had a huge opportunity in Botetourt, and by opportunity, I mean problem. There are places that are well-served, and there are many places that are not served well at all, whether it be through fundamental bandwidth or access in general, other than cellular. So a couple weeks after that, I get a letter in the mail, and the letter says, you have been appointed to the Botetourt Broadband Advisory Commission, my first government appointment, which I was not expecting. So I had a busload of screaming monkeys on each shoulder. One shoulder was yelling at me saying, this is great, look at what you've done. You've put together something pretty impressive. You've gotten county and government involved, and you're going to maybe be able to help all these people that were jumping on board your passion. And the other shoulder said, that'll teach you to never open your mouth again. So a few weeks after that, we had our first meeting, the Botetourt Broadband Advisory Commission. I was sitting near the front of the room. Our vice chairman of the Board of Supervisors was appointed the chairman of the Broadband Advisory Commission, Max Scohorn. We'll see him in a couple minutes or a couple hours. Max said something. I have bad hearing in my left ear, and he was sitting on my left. He said something, looked around the room. A couple people said aye, and I was nominated vice chairman. Before I had anything to say about it. So that same busload of monkeys said, you'll never do that again, will you? So that started this. And it started with me sitting on the garage floor, refusing to believe that we can't solve this problem when we put people on the moon 60 plus years ago. I cannot let myself believe that it can't be done. In the commission, the Eddy report advised that we create the commission and that we talk about it, and then ultimately we have a summit. And that is absolutely where my skill set fell off. I don't know anything about organizing these kinds of things. And by some grace, Arlene Boyd was in the room. And Arlene said, I got this. And each one of you have experienced Arlene Boyd, just like I have. So here we are today. So me starting Indian style in my garage, refusing that this could be a reality, through this entire process, engaging our local government, which has proven not only to be not a battery in my mouth, they've been absolutely amazing. Another checkbox in the story of Botetourt County, what makes Botetourt County great, other than the citizens, other than the natural beauty, other than the rural the pastoral views, if that's a word. Our government is utterly engaged. They're very good people. They're from Earth. I've never experienced any of our government folks acting any other way as I have in other life experiences. So with great humility and appreciation, remembering that I was sitting in my garage floor and now we're here 4 years later, I welcome you to help us solve this problem. You all have great expertise, experience, you have passion, and for whatever reason, even if it was to get Arlene off your back, you chose to be here to help us, to come here and talk about these issues and help us find an answer, because I refuse to believe it can't be solved. So with great humility, with great appreciation, thank you and welcome to the BoCo Summit.
Now we want to hear from you. Email us bocosummit@botetoppva.gov. Engage with us on our journey. We give a special thanks to our community volunteers, and special thanks goes to these organizations. Again, thank you, our sponsors, for helping us to create a path for fast, affordable connections. BoCo Summit, the Rural Broadband Technology Solutions Summit, is presented by Botetourt County of Virginia.